right, everyone. I am back here, your host, Julia, with the Ethical Consumer Podcast. And joining me today is Rich On of Mombucha, a traditional style kombucha brewery in New York City. Welcome, Rich.
Hey, thanks, Julia.
Super great to have you here. So I am curious, we have yet to have a kombucha guest on. We did one of our first live, socially distanced, in-person ones at a beer brewery here local to me in Iowa, but not covered kombucha yet. So I'm stoked to get a new, I'm going to call it a food group, a new beverage style on the podcast. It'll be fun.
Makes sense. That's great. Well, yeah, I mean, kombucha and beer, we're like kissing cousins. There's a lot of similarities, and thank you to all my beer brewing brothers and sisters out there who helped me in the process that we've arrived at, which is just a little bit of a scaled version of a home brew.
Sure.
That's been our goal, or my goal. But I say we because it's not just me. It's never just me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's Justin, who's my head brewer, Justin Ford, who's from Indiana. He's an Indiana boy from those Indiana nights.
Midwest,
and
baby.
Popped out of nowhere, was like, hey, I like brewing kombucha. Are you hiring anybody? And I'm like, not really, but come by and let's talk. And it's become the situation where also now here in kind of pandemic, post-pandemic, like rebuild times, that he's really taken to his position creatively, alchemically. We're thinking about this and not just like, is this a job that I'm going to get paid for? And no, it's, like we're building this fermentopia. We have a vision for healing. We have like a vision for incubation of other small, natural food businesses. Like we have a vision for community arts and culture inoculation is something I like to say that we do. And that all happens here. That all happens here in Greenpoint, where I am standing right now, around the corner from our space, which is where it's just a little bit quieter.
Awesome.
For us to conduct this interview, because if anybody, you've already seen our YouTube and our couple of YouTubes and a couple of docs that have been made on us. A lot of good footage of what's going on over at Magic City, which is the name of our facility, not to be confused with the strip club in Atlanta. But if you confuse us, what am I going to say?
A little different, just a little different.
A lot of excitement happening in both Magic Cities. So,
cool.
And Miami is also called Magic City, and but we spell ours MAGICK, like the ceremonial rite of magic. It's not about illusionism. It's about actually transformation. I think really that's what that word connotes. And fermentation is transformation, people. Don't you forget it. You take two totally random things and put them together, and you got something else that comes out that's completely different and even more random, maybe.
Most definitely.
But, yeah. I mean, in our case, it's very intentional, what we do. But, we never know exactly what's going to happen.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I'm excited to talk about that fermentation process with you, because that's something that is very specific to Mombucha, is how you brew yours, like you said, and I loved reading that on your website too. It is a human scale brewery. So, and do you call it a brewery? Is that the correct terminology?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's hard to not call it a brewery.
The place that you brew the kombucha. So
sure, sometimes we say fermentorium. Sometimes we say kombucheria.
There we go.
Sometimes we say, but a lot of people just kind of offhandedly just call it a kombucha brewery.
Sure.
They'll come in for a party and they'll say, "Oh, I thought this was a kombucha brewery," and then we'll say, "Well, great, we got a kombucha cocktail coming your way in a moment." Or just straight kombucha. It doesn't all. You don't have to get drunk. You can drink kombucha, which has a little bit of alcohol in it. Anyway, we'll get into that.
So with the traditional style, does that have, what is the percentage? Because now there are more commercialized, the big guys out there that are perhaps more in it for the money than the actual booch at this point.
That's fine.
They are they're including the alcohol again, or they're not removing the alcohol. There was a thing in the early 2000s, if I remember correctly, when GTs was like hitting every shelf, that all of a sudden people are like, oh, but it's alcohol. Minors can't buy it. And it's the smidgen of alcohol that had people questioning it. So standards have changed in the kombucha world. How does Mombucha fit into that?
Yeah. So thanks to Lindsay Lohan for outing GT's extra alcohol. So what's happening now? What happened then is actually an interesting foreshadowing to what will be soon, according to something called the KOMBUCHA Act, which is a piece of legislation that's on the table and in front of a bunch of senators and House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. And I'm part of this hill climb to allow the authentic brewing and production of kombucha to proceed, where we don't have to do all this crazy stuff to remove the alcohol or to stop fermentation. Because what happens is when you brew kombucha, even if you're brewing at home, kombucha is going to yield a certain amount of alcohol. But the thing is, it changes over time, and it changes in ways that you can control. So if you try to brew kombucha for its alcohol, you will not get more than about 1.25 or maybe 1.35% alcohol by volume. And that is already too much. That's like 0.5% higher than what is deemed by the TTB, which is the taxation of tobacco and firearms, and alcohol, tobacco, fire, and alcohol.
All three of those banded just together. That's a really interesting trifecta.
I know. It's telling about how food products are getting bundled into these arcane and leftover prohibition, Civil War era, bits of legislation that just have stuck around. Because for no good reason. Well, because also they represent tax dollars to, mainly to the federal government. Mm-hmm. So when you produce beer, you're producing something that minimum has like 3.5% alcohol. Cool. We can agree that we're all going to get drunk on that. No one is ever going to get drunk on homemade kombucha. No one. Sorry. You can really, really super try. You're not going to get drunk. You're going to get probably like booch belly.
Oh, God.
If everyone's experienced that. You just drink too much kombucha, you have something called booch belly, and you've just over-acidified your gut. Mm-hmm. And, you may have done that intentionally. Maybe you wanted to just let things flow. Great. Kombucha's a great thing to do that with. It's going to clean your pipes big time. It's clean all your pipes, not just your digestive pipes, but your circulatory pipes. The organic grouping of acids inherent in kombucha are some of these amazing DNA structuring, cell rebuilding, just base acids that you need. I'm using base and acid in the same thing. These things you need. Okay, mm-hmm. It's a treasure trove of these acids and these compounds. Which is why it's this ancient thing, and which is why it's coming back so strong, mm-hmm. which is why people have seen incredible and discernible health benefits from it. But chiefly, this stuff is like helping your liver do its thing. And as I go down this road of like why kombucha is good for you, as soon as we start talking about alcohol, people are all of a sudden like, well, it's got to be bad for me. Alcohol in it, right? Because all the other things that have alcohol in it are like going to get me drunk, or they're going to give me a beer gut, or have me, be in some kind of 12-step program. Which that's fine if that's what you have to do. If you need that, but at the same time, like kombucha should not be lumped into that.
Sure.
It is a noble elixir from antiquity that we should respect. And that is the kind of reverence that I have for the stuff every single day when I play around with those scobies. This is like some incredibly amazing gift mm-hmm. that was accidentally created from one caravan to the next, and some nomadic tribal people, who are just trying to bring some sugary tea around because, really any sweet thing at that time, we're talking like, 410 BC is like, I think the first record, or AD was the first record of I really want to see this record too. Like I've looked for this record of I think from the Qing dynasty, where they talk about something called, I think it was referenced as the tea of everlasting life.
Oh, wow.
Wow. The tea of everlasting life.
It's potent.
It must be good. But who knew that it could be so yummy? It was my mom that really brought that to my attention and to my brothers and sisters at the time. Though she wasn't as good as, she got better at brewing over time. And but when she did, I was like, oh, this is really good. And I got really hooked on it into my late teens and college years. And then I started brewing, and I'm like, I need to make it as good as her. And I started getting geeky on it. And, then I was like, damn, I think I'm making it better than her. And why don't I just do this? I love this.
There you go.
So, and I kept tasting all the other products that were available, which weren't that many at the time. This was like 2009 when all this stuff started happening. I was like, none of this stuff tastes, all this stuff tastes, like, not like this.
Sugary juice is what I would consider. I remember the first time I had some we're just going to throw GTs in there. No offense, GTs. Everyone knows who you are. You're on every single shelf. So like, that's what everyone has to compare it to at this point. Even back in the earlier 2000s, that was like the first bit. But it was just sugar bomb. It was a huge sugar bomb. And then the first time I had a semi-local one, it wasn't as sweet. And it was more vinegary tasting. The acid there was there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the trick, I think, is to find a balance. You're dealing with cellulosic bacteria that is responsible for vinegar. There is Acidobacter, which is a bacteria that makes vinegar. It's just, that's what's in kombucha, guys.
Sure.
So when you taste a vinegary kombucha, if that's unpleasant to you, then maybe try another flavor. Or, we have 20 flavors for a reason. Because one, it's like, I don't know what people are going to like. I know what I like. And I like them all. I didn't put a label on the stuff because I didn't like it, or that I thought someone else would like it. I don't know what people are going to like. So, but they are all different. Like, there's sour ones, there's sweet ones, there's fruity ones, there's wine adjacent ones, there's herbaceous and herbal vegetal ones. There's almost damn savory ones. I don't know. Like, we're trying to figure out how to ferment tomato juice so that we can do a Bloody Mary mix, and we're doing spicy ones, and these are all future flavors, folks. You're hearing it here first.
I love it. That would be amazing. I remember one of the weirdest things that I've ever had, and then I'm going to ask you the weirdest thing that you've ever had, or your favorite thing, either one.
Sure.
When my fiance and I were in Hungary, and the Palinka, the Hungarian fruit brandy that Hungary is famous for, it's only fruit or only vegetable. Like that is the thing. It has to be the most purest distillation of the thing that you're making it from. They had tomato palinka, they had garlic palinka. I mean, what you're explaining sounds like a similar vein where most people would look at the menu and be like, carrot palinka? Why do I want to drink carrot palinka? It's so good.
Must be.
It's so good.
I know, you never know. I think, again, like, these indigenous types of drinks that are based in some kind of like folk, medicine, which I would imagine palinka probably is. When I went when I was in Mexico for a couple of years, I was involved in a retreat called On Topo, which is short for on topography, or on the land, and it's organized by a guy named John Santos, who lives in Hawaii now, who is really into wanting to bring creators together in a cool place to demonstrate what it is they do. And so it was all different, these really interesting people from all different types of disciplines. And I wanted to be involved, and he said, okay, well, propose something. And I said, okay, cool. Why don't I figure out what all the indigenous ferments of, in this case, we were all in Tulum.
Okay.
I'm like, what are the indigenous ferments of the Mayan, or what are of the Maya? What are the indigenous ferments of the Yucatan? And I went down there and found that there were an abundance of these magical potions. And I'm like, wow, what if it would be cool if I could like recreate one here for this retreat? So instead of just making kombucha, which we did also, but I like smuggled a bunch of scobies and some kombucha bottles, and used some local, interesting forms of carbohydrate. So like you can make kombucha not just with sugar. You can use all different types of like agave, coconut sugar. We use maple syrup, which is a local product for us here in New York. And you can try, whatever stuff like that. And there was this interesting kind of like unrefined, like sort of molasses cake that they had down there. I was like, oh, let me try this. And there's all these different beautiful fruits and stuff. And anyway, I ended up making this stuff called balshay, which is this like kind of, I think it's like a hallucinogenic mead. It's a mead. So I found some like really fancy local honey down there, and you need this like special tree bark from the balshay tree, which, after having read up on it, has a chemical in it that is used in pesticides. Not like we're drinking pesticides, but what that is in the wild is it keeps the bugs off that tree.
Oh, okay.
But to humans, if consumed in great enough quantities, can induce a state of sort of like euphoria. Sounds fun, right? Okay, let's see what this does. And so yeah, we made this stuff, and you put it in you have like a little ceremony around it. You like burn some copal, and make these like little fun gestures and prayers around it, and like imbue it with this positive energy and reverence for it. And we finally, it was awesome. It came out good. You leave it in the sun for over a day, and throw some cinnamon in there, and it's like this honey mead that just was so cinnamony and good. And I don't think anybody tripped, but I definitely like had a Mayan a Mayan god-like purge.
Oh my gosh!
On the beach, where I was like, it felt great. But we drank a lot of it too. I made a shitload of it. But I think that's what you're supposed to do.
That's not going to happen with the Mombucha, though.
I don't recommend purging Mombucha. I do recommend drinking it in tiny, small quantities, like 4 ounces a day. That's what Mom recommended to us do. And that was when she brewed it in her style, which is the way I teach people to brew, which is in this kind of concentrated form. And you use a little bit of extra sugar, but you're using a specific type of vessel, a bowl, which has a huge amount of surface area and a very shallow depth. And what that does is it allows that kombucha action to happen very rapidly.
Okay.
And that is the technique that we've employed here. That is our sort of innovation for a small batch kombucha operation that can be competitive. And a lot of, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So what our necessary conditions here are in Brooklyn is that we have a very small space out of which to work. And it was my task to try to figure out how to make this business sustainable out of this tiny little space.
Sure.
And so we had to just think of so many different ways to use each little square inch of our space to do that, and in particular the fermentation aspect of it. So but basically, we just figured out how to employ this method of using this specific type of vessel, and just you do a bunch of them. So we've got hundreds of bowls going at any given time of all different types of kombuchas, and it's a lot of handwork, but that's how you just get it just right.
Sure.
Says Willy Wonka. Yeah. It's our
So
way of
you're
getting it
using
just
this
right.
bowl as
Yes.
opposed to a typically what you would picture or see in, other companies. If they're large scale, obviously you might have large vats or something similar to like the brew tanks for beer, but this isn't a jar with cheese glass over it.
No, this is a bowl, and it is a thing that you can find at the dollar store, and it's a thing that isn't going to like break the bank for you. And
Sure.
it's like this is a great way of home brewing, and it can also translate into your budding microbrewery of kombucha too. Like there's a way to do it with this stuff, guys. Like you don't have to take, and you can even use the jars. I mean, look, Health Aid is pushing jars around all day.
Mm-hmm.
From as far as I know. Um, I want to believe everything I've heard about how they produce their products. Though it seems to me that Coca-Cola Corporation isn't going to mess around with these little batches all day. Like
Sure.
the $20 million that Health Aid got in investment.
Does Coke
I
own
would
Health
imagine
Aid?
they have the majority share. Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
did
It's
not know
interesting
this.
to all this is public information. Like if you
Sure.
want to look at your local, or rather, what you would say, what you see as a mainstream kombucha in your area,
Mm-hmm.
you can see who funded them and how much.
Intriguing.
Health Aid is at the top, but they only are chasing GTs, which has, I think, almost 50% of the market share of the industry, which is,
Wow.
we're talking $1 billion industry at this point.
Yeah.
Getting there. So GT Dave and all his Lambos in his garage. I would love to. I mean, that's just not how I've taken a slightly different tack on
Sure.
this. Okay, I drive a smart car, an electric smart car. I frequently live out of it, and I am so happy about that. I don't have aspirations to have a garage of Lambos. I don't have aspirations to have excessive things that I don't feel like I'll really use or make me feel happy about.
Mm-hmm.
This resourcefulness and this frugality that I have is all a part of like my expression that comes through in this product. And I think that it's resonant with the people who are our consumers. And since we have had this crazy time of pandemic, it's actually given me enough time to reach out to who I hope would be receptive to this. And the way that we did it was we sort of cleaned up the brand a little bit. We like even further minimalized its look, and partnered with an amazing production house called Studio Kyclops. And Kyclops actually stands for Killian, who would always walk around with his camera, and everyone is calling him Kyclops. And it's his studio, and he's just this really rad dude and does high-end fashion photography, and just brought that sort of like expertise to a consumer brand. And he had a lot of like input on art direction, and we talked a lot about how this can be universalized, and how this high quality product and the premium sort of line of kombucha hasn't really been attempted.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's only just looking for cheap. All the big guys are trying to become price leaders over another and driving the price of kombucha down. I think people are like, yeah, I've seen it for like $2.99 at Walmart, and I'm like, I don't know, did you drink that? What is that? Is it kombucha?
Is it? Yeah.
Which is this idea of like, well, is it kombucha? Okay, there is no standard definition for kombucha right now. Kombucha can be a probiotic enriched vinegar soda kombucha analog and still be called kombucha.
Mm-hmm.
It can be like what you're saying, sugary juice with some vinegar or sourness added to it, with from other acidic ingredient, and still be called kombucha. It's frustrating. Our industry has a trade organization called the Kombucha Brewers International, headed by Hannah Crum, who is an awesome and amazing woman and so passionate about kombucha like crazy, compassionate, even more than passionate about, more than me. And she's the one that's been heading all this legislative work. And we knew each other from when I started the brand way back. And she was doing something called Kombucha Camp, which was like a little social network. And
That sounds familiar.
yeah, that's like her thing, and that was what started all this. But it just brought all home brewers, and then now turning professional brewers together. But Health Aid is part of this Kombucha Brewers International. So is like Dr. Brew and and these guys give a lot of money to this organization. But what's funny is that Hana is like, I want there to be a standard of kombucha. I want for consumers to know that they're drinking an authentic kombucha, and here are the standards.
Sure.
And it's so funny, the guys that are showing up the most to try to steer it are the guys that are making kombucha in this crazy industrial way. Dr. Brew actually is a distillery. They make liquor.
Oh.
Yeah. And their byproduct, the materials they use to make their liquor, the waste product from that is what is used to make their kombucha. And I'm like kind of reducing it down a little too much probably, and they would have a much more favorable explanation for that.
Sure, but a little more marketing friendly.
Sure, but it's all on their website, and you can read about it. I don't remember what their distillery is called, but you can link it from the Dr. Brew site, or you can just say Dr. Brew Distillery or something like that. Anyway, or Brew Doctor or whatever. So I just thought that was interesting. I was like, well, what is it? I mean, it's going through some kind of centrifugal filtration, and then when do you add the scope? It's like,
where's the SCOBY?
Yeah, where's the SCOBY?
It has to have the SCOBY.
Yeah, that's the big question. And if it's being brewed in a 5,000 gallon stainless tank, what's that?
Sure.
We're so far away from, again, where what I'd mentioned in the beginning is this noble elixir that should be regarded with a lot of esteem and care. The mainstream and industrialization of the product has changed it, and has created a market for it, and has created an expectation on the consumer side for it, that it has to be carbonated, that it has to be fizzy. Kombucha is not traditionally carbonated. It only carbonates because you put it in a bottle.
Okay.
If anybody's ever put their home brew, normally you don't even put your home brew in a bottle. It just like is in a jar, and you draw it from the jar, and it's not carbonated. You're lucky if it carbonates under the SCOBY. You've done a good job. If you're able to get carbonation under it. But carbonation only happens when you remove oxygen from the equation. And, that's when the carbon dioxide is allowed to dissolve into the liquid that's naturally occurring from the yeasts that are still in kombucha. And then I'm like kind of tangentially also talking about this alcohol thing with kombucha, because when you put that cap on the bottle, that's when the alcohol starts to be produced as well.
Oh, okay.
Alcohol the alcohol level is rising. But what this legislation, if you are interested, the KOMBUCHA Act, is strictly about allowing that natural alcohol level to increase to the level that it's supposed to.
Okay.
Which is like that 1.25 level. And no longer will we as brewers have to worry about controlling it anymore, which I think has disrupted the natural and delicate process of brewing. So it's exciting. It's exciting that this is happening. Pretty soon, fermented beverages and foods that have residual alcohol will no longer be taxed by the TTB. It allows small brewers like me not to have to worry about that. It was brought to my attention during this hill climb also that some brewers were paranoid that other competitors were testing their product, and if they found it to be over the alcohol limit, that they would out them and have them destroyed. Which is this like, ugh, that should not be in anyone's mind as far as kombucha goes. Like,
no, that's shady.
Karma, people.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a folk medicine, like that's what I'm talking about. Like it's been so commoditized and corporatized and capitalized that just like anything else, that's good. So, and it sounds like I'm against that. I am not. I am embracing that because it's given me now a platform to talk to you and to your listeners about what I'm trying to do, and I think it's just a different tack. My sales are facing in a different direction, but I'm as reliant on consumers buying the product and consuming and drinking and loving the product just as much as any one of these other guys. And so I have to think of it in terms of that as well, and that's fine. It is what it is.
So you would prefer to see kombucha used in the traditional sense as medicine, the elixir of life, not a healthy, new agey replacement for a soft drink like it's usually treated.
That's what's happened. I would like to see people incorporated into their lifestyle, into their healthy lifestyle, in a way that's almost like a supplement. Take it and care for it like it was like you were taking your vitamins in the morning or something like that. And again, like this 4 ounces a day on an empty stomach, as Mom always recommended us do, really helped me. I swear I've not gotten sick in 25 years. Not nary a sniffle. And I don't know, I blasted through COVID. I never tested positive, but I feel like we're like done with that now, right?
Sure. I'm hoping that we're getting there, man. Ugh.
Let's just hope it is.
Yeah.
It is mostly. And nothing happened to me. Not like I was out there like, woohoo, like unmasked, I don't know, touching doorknobs all over.
Sure.
It's like, I was definitely out there paranoid as everybody else. But maybe this kombucha drinking had something to do. Like, I drink tons of kombucha, you guys. Like, and it hasn't hurt me.
Do you drink over your 4 ounce allotment, Rich?
I do sometimes because it gives me an awesome energy boost. So kombucha takes a disaccharide, like in sugar, which has sucrose and fructose in it, breaks it down into a monosaccharide, which is glucose. And glucose is what the brain uses to think.
Mm-hmm.
I know all the keto heads are all like, but what about ketones? In fact, you're right. It does take ketones also. But it really loves glucose.
Yeah.
It really loves glucose when you want to think. And a bunch of other autonomic functions. So I get a boost from drinking kombucha when I need it.
Mm-hmm.
And then especially during this intermittent fasting, before we started recording, we kind of touched on that a little bit.
We did.
Yeah, that's become a little bit of a lifestyle for me, where I'll just fast for 24 hours and eat once a day. And yeah, that whole thing has been feeling really good. I'm starting to burn off fat reserves and, tap my love handles for glucose rather than tap my homebrew system over here, my tap system.
Training your body to burn your love handles instead of the instantly consumed sugar. And yeah, sugar is extremely necessary. Poor sugar gets a bad rap, but that's the magic of the kombucha too. You do need something like that for the fermentation.
Well, sugar is poison. Let's just talk about that for a second. Sugar is bad for you if you just eat sugar. If you just take a spoonful of sugar, that's not good.
No, the glucose,
it's glucose is good. But what sugar, and this is actually a good thing to talk about, because people say, and they see sugar on the ingredients, and they're like, oh, so what is sugar? So sweetener? Like, what's going on here? Sugar is the agent of fermentation. Mm-hmm. It is why this kombucha is why kombucha is kombucha. If it doesn't have to be sugar. It can be any kind of carbohydrate that the yeasts and the bacteria will take to or absorb or respire, or break down into the things that naturally occur in kombucha. So yeah, it's tricky, and we've been prevented from selling on certain platforms because, like, oh, you guys have cane sugar in there. Sorry, it's not cool. But then we're like, well, we have maple, and they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. So it's just like, it kind of just is like whatever you feel comfortable doing.
Sure.
The amount of sugar left in our kombucha is very little. I think we max out at about 6 grams per serving or something like that, which is, by anyone's standards, a good small amount of sugar. But the other fun thing about that is the kombucha is breaking that any residual sugar you have in you from the foods that you were eating before you drank the kombucha down into that glucose. So you're drinking it, all those enzymes, all those microorganisms are playing around inside of you in the same way that they are in the bottle or in the fermentation vessel. Again, arguably why kombucha is healthy for you. Yeah.
So would you suggest if someone was going to start using kombucha more as a supplement rather than a beverage, as his mom's preferred way of delivering it,
right,
would you suggest that they have this before they eat or after they eat, or just really whenever, no rules?
I would say you're going to have better results before you eat.
Sure.
So you're priming your gut with more of what it already has, which will aid in digestion. It will assist you in breaking those foods and sugars down once they come in. So that's kind of, I would say, like, kombucha is breakfast and kombucha is break time. So like 4 ounces in the morning, 4 ounces in the afternoon, keeps you going, pushing through those last few hours of work until you have your evening meal. So that I think is a good way to use kombucha as like a lifestyle user. But I don't think that it shouldn't be a refreshment. I don't think that I don't want to like deter bars from serving it in on tap as an alcohol alternative. I don't want to deter people who reach for a kombucha instead of a sugary carbonated soft drink. I think that's a good idea. If you are feeling refreshment and from kombucha, but you have the option for it to be a refresh with Mombucha. I'm saying for it to be a refreshment or a supplement. It's so authentic. It's so nutritious that you have that option, that versatility, that functionality.
And with that versatility, we're talking about Mombucha because of the traditional brewing process, the fact that it is more of a concentrate, not necessarily prepared to be the refreshment that some other brands are putting out.
That's correct. We're keen on allowing our ferments to run their natural course.
Sure.
We're not trying to maximize our output by like distorting the way that kombucha is brewed. And there's all these tricks. There's so many tricks. There's so much tech. You can agitate the kombucha while it's brewing and oxygenate it during that whole time, and that favors the cellulosic bacteria and like keeps the yeast down low to keep your final product, low in alcohol, and tons of crazy specialized equipment and third-party manufacturers and services have developed around this industry because of all the different ways that you can sort of, I don't want to say like cheat, but I do want to challenge whether or not that all these beverage industry manufacturing types of infrastructural process is at the end of the day what it is, that product. Is it kombucha?
Sure.
Where's the SCOBY?
Where is the SCOBY? Do you have t-shirts that say that? Because if you don't, you should.
That's a partnership you and I can talk
Where is
about.
this? I want partial credit if I'm the one to come up with that, but
We're doing it. You did.
where
We're
is
doing
the
it.
SCOBY?
Where's
Damn
the
it!
SCOBY? Where's the SCOBY? I mean, that could be like sort of a campaign that we could launch
There you go.
about the kombucha standards, which they're happening, but it's slow.
Sure.
It's slow because guys that are making kombucha in ways that are questionable don't want to have to deal with that, and they still want to be able to put the word kombucha on their product. I don't blame them, especially if Coke's got 20 million in on it.
I had no
Better
idea they were in
believe.
on that, man. I know that everyone's in on, and the big guys are gonna get in on the little guys because they know it's a newer, revolutionary way of doing things, and they're getting
Right.
phased out, so they got to do something.
Well,
But
I mean, yeah, that ship is full sail right now.
yeah,
You know, the industry is all about it. You know, and I think it's still cool and interesting to me that it's not a fad. You know, like I think a lot of people in the beginning started seeing a lot of hype around kombucha, and they were sort of being like, oh, I guess it's just another health fad, and we'll see that diminish in another year. It's probably going to go away in another year. 3 years go by, still nothing, and still we're calculating and seeing growth, you know, as an industry, which is exciting. But that's not why I'm in it. And in my video, I also said, if you are to decide whether you want to be in this industry, you need to decide whether you want to make kombucha or whether you want to make money.
yes,
And it's a very hard decision to make. You know, both, but you know, at what cost? And to your values, and at what cost to the authenticity of what it is that you're doing. If you are just trying to make an IPO worthy company, that's fine.
right.
Go right ahead. But if you want to make the best kombucha possible, give me a call.
There you go. There you go. This video that we keep referencing is on the YouTube channel. What was it? Venture. I was going to say Verbo,
Yeah.
but that is in fact the ad that was on before the Verbo video with you. Is that the Venture video with you, is that your project or is that a buddy's project?
Venture is another project that's come out of Studio Kyclops and another director who is really interested in these documentaries on makers. Frank is the director.
Okay.
Who, I forget his last name. I'm sorry, Frank, if you're watching, if you're listening. Such a sweet dude and super smart and super interested in learning more about entrepreneurs that are working on significant and sustainable and also scalable businesses. And they came to me first, so I'm their sort of maiden voyage on YouTube, and I am so grateful to them for having been given that opportunity. They did just an awesome job. It looks so cool. I wish it was less of me blah 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 talking and more of like seeing how we do what we do, because I think what our process is so interesting. You know, the most and the coolest thing that's happened because of all this, and it was because of that first video actually that you mentioned with me with my crazy long hair. A Lebanese kombucha brewer. I'm half Lebanese also.
Oh wow, okay.
I'm Lebanese Irish. I'm a leprechaun.
A Lebanese
Brooklyn.
leprechaun.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I'm a Leb. So like, yeah, it's funny. Like I saw that they were producing. I said, hey, fellow Lebanese, fellow kombucha brewer, what's up? And they're like, holy scobies. I saw your video on YouTube, and it inspired me to do this company. It inspired me to start this company because you do it in the way that you do, which is like this bootstrap, and you know, kind of like doesn't care what anybody else says, and it's not the way everybody else does it. You know, that inspired me enough to just do it, and I was like, that just made my day and my life.
I love it. I love how you are so open and respectful and willing to just launch this mission and product to get back to the traditional roots of kombucha. Even when we're talking about the big guys out there too that maybe aren't doing it in the way that you absolutely love, but you're here for it. You're here for all of it. You're still leaning in your direction and supporting what you want to support, but you have such a support of other brewers too, which I love. And I've seen that in the coffee industry as well. Any roasters that we have on, I ask, what's your favorite drink? What's your favorite food? And they'll say, oh, other roasters' coffee. And that is such a beautiful, non-competitive thing to do and say. You'd think it would be different. And every time I'm shocked and so happy, just like restored faith in humanity kind of situation.
That still happens.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it does here in kombucha world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of my kombucha brothers and sisters around here in New York. There's a bunch of producers, and we are in touch, and we are very helpful and open. There's tons of forums online too. There's Facebook groups and Reddit subreddits, and it's a very open source type of thing. Lately, though, Justin, my head brewer, has been like, "Are you sure we should be like sharing all this information so openly?" And I'm like, I mean, why the heck not? I mean,
if you want to
really,
change the world.
I do. I really do. And I want to, but I also want to just like up the level of quality of kombucha and where it can be available. It's like,
Sure.
I can't supply everyone, like the big guys are filling in the gaps for me. That's just the way I see it. They're doing what their thing is. Like, everybody should have access to kombucha, even if the way they're making it is not traditional, even if what's being produced is like very close chemically to what kombucha is. To me, that's like totally fine. Like, I have a huge debt of gratitude to GT personally because of how he was so also deliberate in bringing this product to market and
Sure.
so masterful in convincing big food buyers to take a chance. And he created this market that I can maneuver in, and I can be as deliberate in my own way. I just think, like, in general, to be connected to your product and also just to focus on the level of quality, hyper focus on the level of quality of your product, that the world will dance around you. Absolutely.
On that note of focusing on the quality of product, if someone is an existing kombucha maker, kombucha brewer, or if someone is interested in getting into it and has seen the jar and cheesecloth method and hiding it under your kitchen sink or whatever, what would your advice be to either the established or the newbie to maintain that sustainability that you're talking about, not only in the preservation of tradition, but also just how they can go about things in a more considerate way, I guess, as you do?
Sure. First of all, don't put it under your kitchen sink. Put it over your kitchen counter, over your kitchen cabinets. You want to get a lot of air. It's nicer air up there, and you just want to keep it out of the sun.
Okay.
UV light is not going to be good for those little guys, those little squiddies. So a dark, cool place, around 73, 74 degrees. It's ideal, room temp. But you can accelerate or decelerate your fermentation with temperature. You can put it in the fridge and stop fermentation, all that kind of stuff. But I think in general, what I think I'd like to impart on the home brewer or the entrepreneur, kombucha entrepreneur, fermentation entrepreneur, healthy foods entrepreneur, is to really take a hard look at the product that you're making, its history, know it very well, and draw from the collective knowledge about that product over time and funnel that all into your creation. It's like there's no need to reinvent something per se, but you can refine it in a very, very special way, and you can have your signature be on that thing, whatever it is, in your own way. But I think for me to just like be the brand and to like be the product and like live eat and sleep and drink it all day, I think that you should be prepared to do that. I think that you should be so all in. You can't really be so half-assed about it unless, it's really just like another, investment for you or something.
Sure.
Like that. Then that's just another way of perceiving it. But from my perspective, and in my opinion, to really immerse yourself in the business, and both on the business and in the business, is necessary in order for you to like have what I would deem some authenticity about the thing that you're doing, and that's it. Just be conscious of that, and be conscious of like the materials that are going in and out. What's your waste? I always, when I spoke at a regenerative business conference back in January, I spoke about how I use the 12 principles of permaculture through the lens of a small business. And if you look at these 12 principles of permaculture, you'll see what I'm talking about. And it's an awesome way to also sort of like think about how you're going to start your business and maintain it, and be sustainable, and have zero waste, and all that groovy, jazzy, hippie stuff.
Oh, that groovy, jazzy, hippie stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
12 principles of permaculture.
Yes.
That's going to get looked up once we wrap here for sure. I am curious, and I'm sure others would be too. That's not something that I am familiar with. So
David Holmgren, I think is his name, who first came up with those, but they're still used today. They're so useful. And permaculture is awesome too. Get into that, peeps. Start permaculture.
There's your recommendation.
Permaculturing everything.
I love it. Love it, love it. And keep the SCOBY. Use the SCOBY.
Where's the SCOBY?
Where's the SCOBY? That's the name of this episode. Sometimes I have to think really hard. Like, what am I calling this episode? Where's the SCOBY is the name of this episode. Hands
Think
down.
no more.
Rich, you are such a wealth of information. I have learned so much. Like, I went through your website, I've watched your videos, and just hearing this from your mouth, especially with what's going on right now as far as not just the alcohol content, but making sure that kombucha can be kombucha and not what the FDA or whoever with the alcohol and the drugs and the food, what they need to be, what they need to have in order to be on the shelf. That restriction sounds very limiting as far as true good-natured kombucha brewing.
You nailed it. Yep. Let's keep kombucha.
Keep kombucha. There we go, guys. And if you guys are curious about this or have any questions, I'm assuming, Rich, you seem to be a very open and willing to share information kind of dude.
Me.
You are at Mombucha on Instagram, mombucha.com. You are on a couple different, very selective e-commerce sites. Bubble is where I happen to have found you.
Yes, Bubble Goods.
And then in New York, I'm assuming in the Brooklyn area is where you guys make the kombucha. Do you have local spots around there, I would assume, as well?
All over. We're
all over.
Like really just like a local product, but we're actually in 90 stores across the country. And
nice.
It's pretty cool. We're out there. We're all over the country right now. It's
I'm
awesome.
sad I don't think you're in Iowa.
We are, but not near you. I know, but I'll tell you where. I forget where it is.
Okay.
We are in Iowa. I know there's a little, like a yoga studio or something that's selling it. It's awesome. But yeah, because of a cool website called Fair, Faire, and if you go to mombucha.fair.com, you'll see our shop there. You have to be vetted as a retailer in order to buy from them. It's a wholesale type situation, but that's how you will get full cases and kegs shipped to you anywhere in the country.
Beautiful. So that is your what we're going to consider your wholesale division is mombucha.fair, Faire.com.
That's correct. And that link is also on our website under the contacts, and info@mombucha.com. You'll get to me. Rich@mombucha.com is another good one.
You're the dude.
Hit me up. I love talking booch. I love talking shop.
I love it. I'm gonna. So I specifically know a friend of mine who I'm going to send your way. She's been a previous guest, Kat Duvik, and her husband. They have a simple syrup company in Minneapolis, and she's been playing with the booch. So
she's already got half the product. If you can take simple syrup and make kombucha out of that,
there you go.
No problem. No problem.
Love it.
I already know how to do it.
Well, awesome, guys. Again, this has been a wonderful episode of the Ethical Consumer Podcast. Rich on from Mombucha, Kombucha, holding up the traditions, keeping it real, and making sure that the future tradition of kombucha is kept alive.